Hi everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'll be sharing the creative process and challenges that I've faced to create an urban landscape in watercolors. This piece was really a challenge for me. First of all, I usually draw and paint mostly characters, so I was definitely out of my comfort zone. Also, I am fairly new to watercolors, so there were many things that were first for me. And finally, I had a time constraint, which became really tight at the end due to my failures along the way. So I decided to paint this piece as a gift for my aunt's wedding. Painting this urban landscape was a very symbolic and meaningful choice, specifically this view. This place I am recreating is a small city called Saint-Affrique, located in Aveyron, south of France. It's my father and my aunt's hometown. And I specifically decided to paint this particular view of the church's bell tower and old bridge as a tribute of one of my father's engravings. I wanted to recreate my father's art piece, but with my own twist. Indeed, if my father's preference was black and white, mine is to use colors. So I thought watercolors would be the best medium. Armed with my father's engraving, a photo reference I took last time I went there, and my watercolors, I was ready to tackle this challenge. And challenge it was. The drawing itself felt like torture. I really hate drawing buildings, and this was almost all architectural elements and structures. It took me ages to get an acceptable drawing, knowing that I wanted to have a lot of details. My drawing process was really messy and I had to start over multiple times. This was seriously exhausting. Once I finished the drawing part, finally, I was ready to start painting, and I set to the task with confidence, starting with the sky, without even trying beforehand, knowing I never painted such a sky in watercolors prior to that. Yes, you've guessed it. Yeah, I messed up big time. Not only my sky was patchy, but it was way too saturated. And while trying to preserve the bell tower, I mistook the masking liquid with white paint, ruining in the process all the details which took me so long to draw. I honestly felt like crying and giving up at that moment. Um, Also, the time I had to complete the whole thing was getting shorter and shorter. This was really nerve-wracking. But I had no choice, so I decided to start over the painting process. But this time I trained and I did several tests to have a strategy to paint the sky with the best possible results. You see, my mistake was to rush into painting without having prior experience with painting this specific element, with this medium, and this type of paper. When painting traditionally, one needs to test things out because you cannot undo your mistakes as you can with digital media. So I took the appropriate steps and learned my lesson, and I was now ready to start again, but this time for real. And I retraced my original drawing with my light box onto a new piece of arches paper and started painting again. I had 5 days to finish the piece, knowing that I work full time during the day and I work a lot of hours. Yes, the clock was ticking. So, when starting again, I learned my lesson from the first tries and the failures with the sky. The first thing I did was masking parts of the clouds. I did not mask all the way to the edge of the clouds because I wanted to work the edges by lifting the paint with a paper tissue to have a softer rendition. Before painting, I wetted the whole area quite generously and used the largest flat brush I owned so my layer would be smooth and more homogeneous. In my first try, the brush I used was not appropriate. Finally, I also tried not to push the saturation of the colors because the painting is not a skyscape. The focus of the image is the church and the bridge. So I wanted the sky to be more discreet, which was not the case with the first try. Once I finished the sky, I did another painting with yellow ochre for the rest of the image. I kind of regretted doing this later on. One of the reasons of my regret was that I did not properly erase part of the graphite as I usually do, and after applying the underwash, it got really muddy, as you can see right here. I still went on and tried to hide my mess up as best as I could, which was actually very difficult because at that part the paper was damaged because of the masking fluid, and it was really noticeable when painting the details. Just one word about the background. I try to paint the background with desaturated colors because, just like the sky, it's not the focus of the painting and it's also far in the distance. I worked the whole scene to have the most saturated colors in the foreground and desaturated colors in the background to give a sense of depth to my painting. Anyways, you can always come back to some parts of your painting when you are working if you feel that it's not saturated enough. But once it's too saturated or too dark, then you cannot go back, especially with watercolors. For the church, as you can see, I used a mix of warm and cool tones. Payne's gray for the cool tones and yellow ochre and burnt sienna, I think, for the rest. I tried to merge them together in the same way as it was in the reference picture, but pushing the colors a bit more because I wanted to exaggerate the colors. With the bridge, I went crazy with the colors. I was like, you know what? Might as well exaggerate. I put pure ultramarine blue with yellow ochre and did not dilute them. I first wetted the area of the bridge and did a wet on wet technique, letting both colors merge together. You might think it is risky to put unnatural colors in a landscape, and I agree with you. I usually am a lot more conservative, but I actually learned that the best results I've got were always when I went a little bit loose with the colors and tried something, yes, a little bit more crazy, let's say. I usually work with the colors I think are safe and more natural. But then at the end, I just try colors that should not be there or that do not come naturally in mind and add touches here and there. For example, I might paint a gray cityscape and out of nowhere take opera pink and add it in places where usually you don't think it would be there. And it actually gives a lot of dynamism and life into the painting. But here, I went nuts with the colors pretty early on, and I do not regret it. The bridge was actually the part that I liked the best. So, for the bridge, I painted with those colors as an underwash, and then I went on working the details, knowing that I was not going to paint every stone of the bridge, as that was not the objective, and I think it would have taken out the focus of the painting. Sometimes less is more. Well, even though, yes, I admit I do a lot of details, and it's something that I should try to simplify. But still, even in my detailed approach, I restrain myself a lot. I decided to do the stones that were around the edge of the bridge, but for the rest of the bridge, I just hinted at the stones. After that, I started with the shadows, as you can see, and this time I went with purple because I thought it was a very good way to bring together the yellow ochre and the blue for the shadows. About this purple, it's a color that I really like, and I have a friend who hates purple, and each time she says that I add too much purple in my paintings. But you know what? Yes, I do. But I think the results are pretty cool, so I'm going to keep doing it. This part of the bridge that you see me do as I went on painting it, I did a mistake. I increased the value too much and it was way too dark. After that, I had trouble minimizing the value because it's watercolors. So I managed to decrease its value a bit with uh, Naples yellow, but it was difficult. Yeah, sometimes when you make mistakes early on, you pay the consequences. And in this painting, I kept making mistake after mistake. As you can see, I started painting the river. I started wetting the area, then went on with blue and added greens and continued with layer upon layer of different colors. Regarding the part surrounding the flowers, I decided to use a negative painting technique, which was a hassle, but I did not want to put masking fluid on the flowers because with this paper I had issues with the masking fluid previously. It damaged the paper, as I told you, for the bell tower. So I wanted to avoid masking fluid because, yeah, the paper does not tolerate it, and that's why I did the negative painting technique, which took a while. With the river, as you can see, I'm adding more and more layers. I added again purple, more indigo. My objective was, of course, to have the most saturated and dark values in the foreground in comparison to the background. Even though I did more mistakes in some parts where in the background the values are too dark, but I think that at the end I managed to balance it out. So now you can see I'm working on the flowers and I went on with different hues of purple, some that are more pinkish, others more bluish. I wanted to have subtle variations. However, it was a difficult task since I did the first in the painting with yellow ochre. Indeed, I should have not painting the flowers with the first yellow layer because then the colors were not vibrant enough. But I fixed that later with color pencils. Now I'm working on the shadows for the plants, adding darker values, still working on the painting to make all the foreground parts appear closer to the viewer, and adding more colors to add depth. For the final part of the drawing, I took my Faber-Castell Polychromos color pencils so I could fix the colors of the flowers. I was able to add a lot more vibrancy to the flowers and subtlety as well. And as you're going to see, I'm switching colors a lot, and I did cut off a lot of the footage for this part because otherwise the video would be way too long. Well, it was very long. It's almost 14 hours of footage that I cut into 15 minutes plus the intro. So yeah, I had to cut colors. But I think the final result is close to what I wanted, and even though I struggled a lot with this painting, you see, with patience, dedication, and while learning from your mistakes, you can achieve a result that is convincing and satisfying for you. Because the first person you have to please is yourself. I'm my hardest critic, and even though I'm not 100% pleased with this painting, I'm still happy. There's room for improvement, and that's what motivates me to go on. So there you go, my final piece of Saint-Affrique. And I can tell you, my aunt and her fiancé were extremely pleased. Hope you enjoy spending some time with me. If you did, let me know by liking this video. And if you want to see more of my creations, subscribe. I wish you a nice day, night, whatever the time you're watching this, if you're watching this until the end.